Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the Center for State's video series on readiness. This series is produced by the Capacity Building Center for States and funded by the Children's Bureau. The Readiness Brief is intended to help child welfare agency leaders, managers, and stakeholders determine an approach to assessing readiness and understand the key factors that influence readiness. It does this by providing step-by-step guidance to examine readiness and analyze findings throughout the change and implementation process. In this module, we will continue our conversation about readiness by digging into how to conduct a readiness assessment. As a reminder, by now teams seeking to assess readiness should have reviewed and considered the factors that contribute to readiness and developed an assessment approach before moving on to analyze findings. There are factors that can influence how a team chooses to conduct the readiness assessment. Teams should review and consider the following before moving forward: the scope, time to invest, and purpose of the assessment. Is it a broad tool with many factors to assess, or more specific and targeted to a few factors? Is it intended to build a shared understanding of overall readiness as part of the regular CQI processes, or to assess capacity for long-term change over time, or to prioritize areas that need to be developed before implementing a new intervention? Is there flexibility to collect additional information if the assessment reveals many items that are unknown or not ready? The scale of the instrument or tool. As a reminder, readiness is rarely a ready or not ready scenario. Scales may ask for responses on a scale of not yet, somewhat, completely, or a 5-point scale that ranges from absent or not considered to fully in place. Scales should include enough options to be able to consistently reassess and monitor changes over time. The type of responses the team would like to collect is another consideration. Some tools are intended to be completed individually and then viewed as a total aggregate response. Others work well for a facilitated discussion to gain consensus on where an organization sits on any one item. Considering these factors will help to ensure that the team conducts an assessment that is as comprehensive as possible and provides sound information to the implementation team. Following planning, teams or their designated leads will conduct the readiness assessment and need to communicate about it. Implementation teams will want to effectively communicate about the assessment and continue to build support and buy-in before, during, and after the assessment period. Effective communication should inform participants of the purpose of the assessment and how the information will be used. Teams should remind participants that readiness is not gauged as a pass or fail, and that the information gathered during the process will help to prepare the organization to be ready for the intervention or change initiative. Implementation team leads should also follow up with participants to thank them and provide an update on how the findings are being used. Clearly communicating throughout the readiness assessment process can help build buy-in for later implementation efforts. As noted in Module 3, there is no single proven instrument available to measure readiness for implementation that applies to all potential situations in child welfare. The Center for States developed a readiness assessment tool to complement the brief and essential functions. This tool is designed to help child welfare agency implementation teams assess readiness for a specific program, practice, or other intervention and support planning for its implementation. Teams also can use the tool to assess readiness for change once a problem or need has been identified, but before a specific intervention has been selected to address it. The Center for State's Change and Implementation Readiness Tool incorporates 3 parts. Part 1 is a checklist of key change and implementation milestones. This section presents a checklist that an implementation team can use to document where they are in the change and implementation process. This checklist helps direct users to key change and implementation milestones, and also informs which sections of the readiness items to complete. Part 2 are the readiness assessment items. The 50 assessment items are organized in a table in the 3 component areas of motivation, general or foundational capacity, and intervention-specific capacity. Each item is also connected to one of the 5 broad dimensions of capacity used by the Center as a framework for thinking about capacity, which is covered briefly in Module 2. Part 3 is a summary of readiness findings and areas to address, offering a place for teams to summarize the identified strengths, areas to address, and challenges or barriers that may impact successful change. Before initiating use of the Readiness Assessment tool, agencies will need to consider the following. Who should participate in completion of the tool? The Center's tool is designed to be used by an implementation team that is responsible for overseeing and guiding the agency's efforts through the change and implementation process. The team should reflect individuals with diverse expertise and perspectives from across the organization and stakeholder groups who will be affected by the change. When to use the tool. Use of the tool is particularly important before implementing a selected intervention to assess readiness for implementation. Teams may also find it useful to apply the tool at these other points: at the beginning of the change process, to assess broader organizational readiness for change, and while the intervention is being piloted or staged, to monitor changes in readiness and identify new capacity needs. The milestone checklist in Part 1 can help teams determine where their agency is in the change and implementation process and related readiness considerations. How to administer the tool. Implementation team members collectively complete the tool and rate their extent of readiness based on an examination of relevant information and agency data. Agency teams may find it useful to identify one individual to serve as a lead facilitator for team discussions and to help the group come to consensus in rating the various items. Teams will need to consider existing sources of information and agency data, and also whether additional information or data is needed to rate the items. Lastly, let's take a quick look at the rating system of the tool. For the core of the tool, Part 2, a rating system framework is provided to generate discussion and assist the team in determining how ready the agency is for change and implementation. For each readiness item, teams should indicate one of the following. Fully ready to go. This rating should be selected if the readiness item is determined to be firmly in place or when the team strongly agrees with the item statement. Partially ready to go. This rating should be selected if the readiness item is determined to still be under some phase of development or when the team only somewhat agrees with the item statement. Not ready. This rating should be selected if the readiness item is determined to be not present or when the team disagrees with the item statement. Or don't know. This rating should be selected if information regarding the readiness item is unknown to the team. For such items, the team may find it beneficial to gather information needed to rate the item. For example, conduct a survey or focus group, or bring additional individuals who have some information specific to the item into the assessment process. Participants are encouraged to use the column marked Notes or Evidence to briefly document information or data used to support rating the selection for each item. Teams also may note strengths or challenges for that item. To gather additional information, teams may use one of the other readiness instruments referenced in Appendix B of the Readiness Assessment Brief, or other methods such as surveys or focus groups. Let's take a moment to check in on what you've learned about how teams conduct an assessment. What factors may impact plans to conduct an assessment? The scope, time and purpose of the assessment, the scale of the tool, and whether to collect individual or group responses. How do teams clearly communicate the need for the readiness assessment? By explaining the purpose and how results will be used, reminding participants that readiness is not a pass or fail activity, and following up. What do teams need to consider before conducting an assessment? Who will participate in the assessment? When to conduct the assessment based on its purpose, and how to collect responses. Now take this a step further by reviewing the reflection questions and practice exercise for conducting a readiness assessment in your readiness workbook to connect what you've learned to your own experience. Up next is analyzing findings and identifying next steps, the fifth and final module in our series on readiness.
This video was created by the Capacity Building Center for States, funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Children's Bureau, under contract HHS P23320140033C. The content of this video does not necessarily reflect the official views of the Children's Bureau.